Ice cream. That's what's up.
All right, go ahead and get rid of this silly blindfold, and I will tell you what happens, or what kind of developments there are the next day before I start collecting your morning actions. So, the next day, the big news of the town is that yesterday the king had started lining up rows of pikemen in the harbor, kind of preemptively, to make sure if anything comes rolling off this ship, they have a line of protection there. Today, the pikemen are still there. Nothing has changed on or aboard the ship, but their job has changed. Whereas yesterday, their job was kind of to stand at the ready to guard Dunfoss from anything that might march off of the ship. Today, there's a crowd of people in High Courts Harbor demanding to be let aboard the ship of King Catsbin. And the city guardsmen, the palace guardsmen, they're not city guardsmen, they're not moss caps, but the palace guardsmen are keeping them back. So far, this looks like it's not going to kind of explode into anything terrible. The crowd is not big enough. The crowd is unarmed anyway compared to the pikemen. There currently isn't a gangplank rolled out to the vessel. But there is a good crowd of people demanding to be allowed aboard the ship. And so far, the palace guard are keeping them from doing so. So with that in mind, let's collect some morning actions.
I think we need to pass along what we know to the king. Like, the main question I have is, how much protection do we want to protect this guy? Because, again, he was fairly forthcoming with the fact that the existence of the information.
We know where that letter came from.
What is that, the symbol for the apple of time?
It bears the sigil is that of a vanishing apple, which you know to be the sigil of the apple of time. But there was no indication on who in that society might have written the letter or why it was written in that language.
I have a thought. Let's call in the closest thing we can get to a favor with Caitlin Chubb and see if she can use any kind of divination to figure out who wrote this letter.
Make an insight check.
Yep.
Alex.
That's pretty good. That's I believe it's just a 15. Let me double check. Still arranging my spells. That's a 15.
Caitlin Chubb had no great love of King Tensails, but she was extremely loyal to King and Crown. Like, that was one of her sticking points. It's one of the reasons she didn't want Tensails to sit the throne. But now that he is the king, that idea might not sound as hopeless as it might at first glance. She might be completely on board with getting to the bottom of this assassination plot.
You think we,
If we go...
Go ahead. Journey in on this as well.
Yeah, Journey is actually... question, how much of an expert at magical items is Journey? I know she was...
Not much. She's not a magic user herself. She has some innate Tiefling magic that she was using to kind of showcase to people. If you remember, her whole platform was that magic is too destructive to be allowed in the hands of government, kind of thing. But she's not a magic user herself. So she kind of is acting on direction from the king. And she's supposed to kind of defer a lot of... If she has, like, really hard jobs on her desk as far as identifying or containing really dangerous magic material, she's supposed to defer to you. So far, that hasn't happened.
As soon as we go to Journey, it's official. Like, she's actually our boss, right? So if we want to keep looking into this without Tensails throwing everything into a loop, I think we talk to Chubb first.
But Journey has also helped Lucius surreptitiously move a lot of dangerous magical equipment away from the king.
Yeah, but Alex has no idea about that.
Lucius
Okay.
will say, Lucius will come forward at this point and say, Journey and I have done a considerable amount of crime together.
Ah, well, you know, that's
I'm sorry, did you say crime? Did I hear you right?
Crime is about the best way to... Embezzlement, maybe?
what have you,
Embezzlement is a subset of crime!
Am I consorting with a known felon here?
Crime
No,
is a superset of embezzlement!
Unknown felon.
Felon implies that I've been convicted, which that has not happened yet.
everything's legal until you get caught.
Alex, yesterday didn't you, without legal authorization, break into a magical communication chamber underneath the Gnomish embassy?
Yeah, but that was my dad's. Like, that doesn't even count.
Fair. Okay. Trying to get a sense of where everybody sits on the crime scale.
Crime scale. At this point, Gus is just immune to it. Like, light property damage, you know. It's all the same. It's all light property damage.
Considerable amount of crime? What are we, like, have you been gold or magic or what?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much crime? Like, we're looking at, like...
Lucius, you are fairly sure that if the king finds out what you and Journey did, you would both be on the block. This is a fairly egregious breach of trust, considering you pled your service to this king and then immediately went behind his back.
So like an 8 or a 9. Gotcha.
No, this was definitely a 10. I asked
this-
Lucius and he said it.
So, I think embezzlement, the other part of a subset of crime that I'm thinking here is treason?
Treason? Yeah, treason's probably a good word for it.
We just won't talk about that.
Treason in service of this country, though.
I
Does
will
step work on the guillotine.
I will say that in light of the invasion of this, I don't know, like Underdark stuff. I don't know. It would have been a good idea to have some of the stuff that apparently you crimed across the ocean.
Crimed. I just like to picture like a big crate sitting in Kiska right now, filled with this magical bullshit, which is the big red stamp on the side. Crimed by Lucius. So let's get some morning actions. Who's doing what?
Alright, I'm gonna go talk to Caitlin Shub about this note. I think she's a
go
pretty
with you.
decent diviner. Sounds like she might be on our side for this one. She owes us a favor after we gave her a spell book.
Gus, if you're not doing anything, we gotta go harass some apples of time.
Okay.
Unless you had a better idea.
No.
Be sure to
it's
bring Numac with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, take Numac with you.
We
Alright.
do. Well, Numac won't listen to us. Tell him to listen to us, please.
Numac, listen to these.
Wait,
people.
who does Numac listen to?
Lucius.
I thought he
Lucius.
listened to
Lucius.
Gus. Oh, just Lucius? Okay.
Apparently, like he pledged his life debt to me, but Lucius is the one that actually took possession of the sword, so he belongs to Lucius now.
Well, hand back the sword then. Jeez.
I've already done that a long time ago.
I don't think Numac cares. Where are we at on what is the timeline for actually going to the king and letting him know that this is happening underneath the ocean? The reason I ask is because we have like a very short timeline, and in addition to that, we have. But on the other hand, the king is not subtle.
Yeah, he should be the last resort. If we run out of options, we invoke him.
I'm
I know, but-
I'm thinking around day 3. If there's like
So-
3 days
Yeah.
left, 72 hours, that's when we pull the trigger.
All right.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
we
good.
and just so we know, we also tell him we didn't have a timeline. This
Until,
far
yeah,
out. Yeah, okay.
obviously,
No, yeah,
the
yeah.
calculations are extremely complicated. It took me 3 days to work on them.
Right, we lie, right? Just
Well, I don't lie. Lucius lies.
More crimes.
Lucius lies. Yes. we let the crime guy handle this.
To be clear,
From
lying
last
to
year?
the king is a crime.
Well, yeah.
Which is why we'll let Lucius do it, because he's already...
Lucius has already done all
I'm
the
sorry.
crimes.
You saw me and my -2 deception try and walk out of a basement yesterday. What weren't you watching?
Subtlety and diplomacy are not in my lexicon, just to remind everyone.
So
It's
what
like
are Connor and Gus doing this morning?
I guess we're gonna go take Numac and investigate. We're gonna make trouble at the Apple of Time.
I'm going to talk to Orzad Karn and disrupt him from his sleep, which he might be in.
Okay, so you're going to the bunkhouse in Northgates?
Yeah.
I guess light property damage.
Is that just Gus's middle name?
It is now.
Gustavus, light property damage, Humphrey Horatio Winkledink.
Excuse you.
Alex and Lucius, how do you present this information to Caitlin Chubb, who I just recently used as an example on my blog of an NPC that I invented for one particular purpose that my party then decided is the most important character in the city?
I don't feel like we really need to hide anything from her.
No, I think we
I think we just tell her we've been investigating a plot on the king. We found this note that we believe was given to a very powerful noble. Does it have his name on it?
No, it is not signed.
Yeah. Yeah, given to a powerful noble, and we can't determine whether or not they went through with it. But if we could find out who wrote the note specifically, as opposed to a member of the Apple of Time, that would do us a world of good.
So when you say you're telling her everything, you tell her that this indicates like a plot of assassination against the king. Lucius got it after breaking into Humberth's manor and stealing it from him.
No, I'm going to say we found it as part of our investigation, and I'm not going to mention the noble by name. We'll
Got
tell her everything she needs to know.
Okay. Well, the first thing she needs to know is who it was delivered to. In other words, are we revealing it's House Humberth and particularly the Duke?
Yeah, I think she's gonna find that out either way. She's a diviner.
Okay.
And she asks you what you've done to warn the king of this plot. Surely he must be notified.
The date's in the past, so we don't think it's actually happened yet. We're trying to get to the root of things before the king makes a whole big deal of it. Basically, as soon as we'll bring it to the king, but as soon as we do that, 10 sales, the entire city will be up in arms. If we can get a day or two to track this person down when they're not aware that we're aware of them, we might might have a better chance of catching them.
And so what you want her to do is try to find out who wrote this letter using divination magic.
Any divination that can tell us more about the specifics of the letter would be incredibly helpful.
She bids you to leave the letter with her and revisit her tomorrow morning. And if she doesn't have an answer by that time, it's beyond her abilities to suss it out. What's giving her pause is... Actually, make an insight check. See if you can notice what's giving her pause, because she's certainly not going to tell you. She's not going to tell you what her weaknesses are.
11, I think?
11?
Yeah.
How'd Lucius do?
It's an 8, but I think now's a good time to figure out to get Mephistopheles to lean on reality. That's a 12.
A 12?
Yeah.
So yeah, she tells you to leave the letter with her. Come back tomorrow morning. If she doesn't have an answer by then, it's beyond her abilities to suss this information out from her magic. But she doesn't strike you as being filled with confidence.
Okay.
Meanwhile,
are there any components or reasons that I could grab you that would help?
No, you're calling in a favor, remember? So she's not charging you anything for it.
No, I know that. I'm just saying, since she's not, if there's anything she might have a hard time, any special components for spells or anything that she might have a hard time acquiring, Alex could probably get her.
The kind of things she would need to make this divination more likely to work would be the kinds of things you wouldn't be able to get without knowing who wrote the note.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, best of luck.
Anything else with Caitlin Chubb before she gets to work?
Nah, I'm done.
Okay. Connor and light property damage. You guys receive sort of the same welcome as you did at the dojo stage last night, Connor. People are welcoming. They're understanding that you've probably had a long journey on the road to get here, and everybody is willing to start going into Apple of Time philosophy with you at the drop of a hat, kind of giving you a mild sales pitch on their ideology. But you're here to try to have a face-to-face meeting with Orzad Karn. Is that correct?
That is correct.
They ask your names.
Connor.
Us?
The person you're speaking to heads upstairs into, this is a kind of 4-story large structure, but cramped on the inside. The ceilings are only about 9 or 10 feet overhead. And with tight hallways and very small rooms. Did you bring Numac with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I assumed we were, so Numac would have also given his name, I assume.
Sure. And Numac tells you, because he's stayed here periodically in the past, whenever he has passed through Dunfoss, and tells you that Orzad Karn, as a right of his station, does not demand treatment above even the lowliest members of the Apple of Time. Like, he himself will sleep in a small, unadorned room with a mat on the floor and maybe a chamber pot, and that's about it. And he'll even stay in different rooms every night because he feels that attachment to even one place, even if it's not a strong attachment, and even if it's only to a room that you don't do anything in except sleep, can be seen as a weakness to the connection to the apple. So you're getting some of the philosophy whether you like it or not. After a few moments, the runner returns to tell you that Karn is breaking his fast, but would be delighted, as long as the business doesn't take too long, to share a few choice words with his good friend Numac. In other words, he's eating breakfast. Right after he's done, he's got business he needs to attend to. As long as you don't teak up... You have maybe 3 or 4 minutes once you get in the room. Once he's done eating, he's got to move on.
Okay. Before we go in there, Gus is going to ask Numac. Numac, what is the chance that the same thing that was in Percival Penniless's brain, because I'm assuming we would have told Numac since he's working with us.
Sure.
What is the chance that this could be in Mr. Head Apple of Time guy's brain?
Are you wearing your armor at the moment, Gus?
Yes.
He thinks on this for a moment. Connor, you're not wearing any kind of armor, are you?
Not plate or anything like that. I think leather armor.
Leather?
Yeah.
Okay. Numac tells you that a man who sleeps on the ground at night, under a tree, in his street clothes, might be wary of snakes biting him about the midsection. Then he reaches out with his hands and gives you 2 sharp knocks on the front of your plate armor and says, "But the man wearing plate need not worry."
I think he said, I think that means no.
That's as close to a straight answer as Numac gets.
Right.
Right. I don't wear a plate because it slows me down, and it's heavy. I don't really like it.
But you do sleep. You are kind of a hobo, sleeping under the trees.
Listen.
What did you do with snakes?
You guys have 3-4 minutes to get upstairs and talk to Karn.
We're going.
You're gonna waste it downstairs talking about
No.
snakes and hobos and.
Yeah. No, we're walking and talking.
Yeah.
We're doing like an Alan's. We're doing like a Sorkinson. Walk and talk.
You're
And
admitted.
Alan Sorkinson.
Alan Sorkinson.
Man, I had an Alan Sorkinson once to put me on my ass for like 4 hours. Those things have a lot more alcohol than you'd think.
Good old Arnold Sarkeesian.
Alan Sorkin.
Sorkinson.
Aaron Sorkin.
It's Aaron, not Alan.
I know it is. I just I
Sorry.
just said the wrong
We're
name.
walking and talking. Yeah.
Get upstairs. You're admitted into Karn's room, and it's exactly like Numac described. There's nothing in this room except a small window in the back wall through which sunlight is streaming this early in the morning. There's a mat in one corner, which is recently been slept in. There is a chamber pot off to the side, and Karn is sitting cross-legged in the center of the room, with just a wooden plate and some modest utensils on the ground, and he's just eating his way through a crust of bread and a hard-boiled egg when you guys enter the room. There's nowhere to sit. There's barely enough place for all three of you to stand inside here. Nonetheless, Karn greets Numac warmly, and Numac very immediately points out that it's not a friendly meeting, but rather that his associates have business with Karn's vessel.
Mm-hmm. So we would have established this before we walked in. How diplomatic do we want to be with this? We don't have anybody watching us, Connor.
There are many, many people in this building, though.
I understand that.
Okay.
Yes, but subtlety and diplomacy are not in my lexicon.
Right.
That having been said, I don't think he knows.
I'm just saying,
Well-
how when we go in this, how are we going to skirt the issue? Are we going to tell him? We're going to outright tell him somebody in your apple of time is trying to kill the king, or are we just how?
Well, he's probably going to be coy with us, so we should be coy with him.
Okay.
So you enter the room, and this brief exchange happens with Numac, and the Numac immediately melts behind the two of you. Karn is still sitting on the floor, and he's eating very delicately, eating kind of slowly with small bites. And he looks up, and he points his two-pronged fork at Connor. Says, "A man matching the description of your vessel came to visit me last night at the dojo."
Yeah, that was me.
He nods and says, "So the business was urgent enough last night, but not so urgent that I need be disturbed."
I was being courteous.
He tells you that courtesy is a form of currency. That he believes too many people are far too frugal with this currency. And he offers you his gratitude for choosing to spend it last night.
All right, well, that immediately disarms Connor because he was not expecting that. Thank you. I think.
Us is surprised. Like, holy crap! Somebody got Connor to.
Somebody weirded Connor.
Somebody courteous. They were so courteous they made Connor polite.
I'm with Flumph Inc. This is my associate Gustavus. We are looking into. We're doing some investigating work with Wow.
Going-ons in the city.
But going on to the city and specifically, the word has slipped out of my head. I want to say psychic elements, and psychic's not the word. What's the word? Psionics. Thank you. With the psionic forces.
He nods and he tells you that the vessel will hear your concerns. What shall we discuss?
Oh, aware of the goings on of the Apple of Time are you actually?
He tells you that in the eyes of the Crown of Dunfoss, which always peer the same direction, regardless of who sits the throne, but in the eyes of the Crown of Dunfoss, the Apple is an organization. But he says that to use the phrase organization to describe a system like the Apple of Time is doing it a disservice. An organization is, or an organism for that matter, is a lot of member parts, each doing one particular function in service to the organism as a whole. And he kind of punctuates this by dipping part of his crust of bread into the egg and eating it. He tells you that the tongue tastes the food, and the teeth masticate it, and the throat swallows it, and the belly digests it. Everything has its own particular function. And then he shakes his head and he says, in truth, the Apple of Time, each man is an organization unto himself. No man here serves a function, and the organization, such as it is, has no goals.
Okay. Gus is going to whisper to Connor, I'm going to go for it. And he's going to say, okay, which part of the organization's job is it to plot to assassinate the king?
He says that this was a point of some discussion at a court yesterday when the king issued summons to himself and several other either high-up members or headmasters of various magical colleges, including, he notes, the ambassador to the gnomish kingdom of the Underdark, Deep Merxiv, that the king believes that his life might be in danger as a result of this ghostly ship appearing in High Court Harbor. And he asks you, this is the nature of the danger you speak?
Yes, but I think you misunderstood my question. We have proof, we have evidence that somebody in the Apple of Time is plotting to kill the king, and we want to know, like we have pretty good evidence, or someone is either in the Apple of Time or is using your name, and you know how that worked out for Telesnus Apt.
He tells you that Telesnus Apt's downfall was the nature of it being an organization that crumbled under its own weight. It was so large that no one part of it understood the scope of what it had become. Even in nature, when an organism grows that cancerous and tumultuous, the organism dies rather than thrives. Nonetheless, if you name this man and present me your proof, I would hear it.
Connor says telepathically to Gus, dies itself by or cancer, or it ejects itself into space.
Gus busts out laughing.
And Karn apologizes. Says, I did not mean to make a jape. Perhaps I
I'm
misspoke.
sorry. No. Listen.
And at this point, he's got like 3 bites of egg left.
All right. So here's the thing. Like, you think that you're not an organization that can't be stamped out? That's the gist of what I'm getting? You think you're an idea and ideas or whatever? We came to you because we don't want you to test that theory with the blackjackets and the city guard and coming down and rounding you all up and you sitting in prison. Like,
he asks you if you know of a prison that can hold a heavenly being like him.
I'm pretty sure they exist. Who knows?
I mean,
the world is wide.
I'm sure. Oh, he's dragging me down. What am I doing with him? Well, I'm sure there is no heavenly prison that can possibly contain you. We are working here on the material plane, so, you know.
And he tells you that the vessel is willing and accepting of any sort of ideas that lie parallel to the truths that he knows as a being who, at the moment, inhabits this vessel that calls itself Karn. So what he wants you to do is name this man who is in the Apple of Time, who bears danger, bears a threat to the king.
Florian would have so much fun with this NPC. Oh,
He's dead.
oh, this would be incredible. He is dead.
Dead. It's your fault.
And so the second time he asks you to name the man who
Just name
was
him.
the assassin as he eats his last bite of egg.
We came here to let you know that this existed in your group, since you don't want to call it an organization. And when we get a name, can we come and speak to you? Because like we're aware that Alex has tried to get a name. Like they went to do that. So we'll have to see. It doesn't look like we're going to get anything out of him.
Yeah. The impression that I get is that you don't actually know either, which is okay.
Yeah.
And he finishes eating, and he gets to his feet. He says that your time together has come to an end, but he's glad that you were able to share your concerns. And he looks forward to be able to offer what small assistance this vessel can. If you are able to present a name and present evidence of a man who intends to harm the king, you will find Orzet Karn at your service. And then he begins walking out of the room.
Okay. Numac. What are the chances that he's the one that's trying to kill the king? You've spent more time with him than we have.
Numac asks if that's the evidence that you have.
What?
He doesn't believe that Karn is the man who presents a danger to the king, because if he were, you and Connor would have confronted him violently.
I was just asking your opinion, Numac.
But that's why he doesn't believe it. If you guys thought he was the guy, you would not have come up here having a pleasant conversation. You would have closed the door behind him. And
But I hate that I understand that.
I can't argue with that reasoning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's right. In a vacuum, though, Numac, with no outs, like just taking into account your interactions with this man.
he tells you that it's not the nature of members of the Apple of Time to discuss their long-term goals with each other unless they are seeking direct assistance. And Karn, though he is open to discussion of the grand ideals of the Apple, has never sought Numac out to ask for any sort of assistance.
All right. Thank you, Numac. Let's go see if they had any luck with Caitlin.
You guys put a quarter in like, the Numac fortune teller machine that just printed out just cryptic bullshit.
You can go on ahead. I want to just observe here
Okay.
for the time being.
So let's go ahead and collect some afternoon actions. Connor, are you staying here?
Yeah, with the goal of seeing if Orzad Karn goes anywhere.
I mean, are you going to follow
And if he
him?
talks, yeah,
Because he's leaving the premises right now. He's going to go about his day.
yeah.
So you're going to
Connor's
follow
bull.
Karn.
Yeah.
Okay. What is everybody else doing this afternoon?
What were you gonna do, Alexander?
I was about to ask you the same question. What do you think?
Uh, hmm. Operating under the assumption that we had a moment to reconvene and share information.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Lucius is going to go and find Journey.
Up at the palace?
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I going to be committing crimes if I go along with you when we do that?
That actually begs the question: are we still being searched for by the Moscaps
Not strongly.
for our previous crimes?
I mean, keep in mind that yesterday there wasn't a big crowd forming up at the harbor that needed attention.
oh, right.
So you guys have slipped down the priority lists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'll go along.
Yeah.
So Alex is also going to go see Journey. What's Gus doing?
Gus is going to go check on what is his name? Percival.
Okay.
I'm going to check on Percival and see if he remembers anything.
Connor, give me a stealth check, please. Gus, give me an investigation check, please.
Okay.
I have one of those. That is a 23 on stealth.
That is a 20 on investigation.
Okay. Alex and Lucius,
Sure.
you're going to go up to the palace and discuss things with Journey. Now, at this
Yeah.
point in the early afternoon, Ten Sails is holding court, again, with a bunch of other high-ups from around the city. By this point, you've kind of determined that he's discussing some of his various options that he has. He's trying to get a good sense of what the threat is and who might be involved, but he's meeting with a different group of people today than he was yesterday. My question is, are you going to present yourselves to this court in order to get in touch with Journey, or are you going to try to call her away from court and speak to her privately?
I want to speak to her privately.
Okay.
We've got 3 days before we've said we're going to go to the king, so...
Yeah.
Okay. So, where do you want this meeting to take place? Somewhere in and at the palace, or somewhere else entirely?
I mean, does Journey have an office?
She probably does, but she's the kind of person who wouldn't use it.
Does she... and she's not a spellcaster, so she wouldn't think to necessarily magically prevent it from being eavesdropped on. Let's try and get her somewhere outside, though. Let's try and get, like, a room at an inn, and I can put up the beads and whatnot.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you wait about an hour or so, and Journey does show up with two of her underlings who are assisting her, and she's perturbed and probably a little annoyed at all of the cloak and dagger stuff when she arrives.
Yeah, well, that's fair, but this is a.
Are the underlings in the room too, or are they waiting outside?
That's up to you.
They need to wait outside.
Then she asks them to go downstairs and go down to the common room and see if they've tapped the keg yet. And she's willing to hear what you have to say.
And Alex will hang up the thing that makes the magical secrecy curtain, the beads in front of the door.
Fair enough.
apologize for the, like, as you call it, the cloak and dagger stuff, but we have received information as to what the nature of the threat to the city is that this ship poses. But our concern is that an attempt to retaliate, our king might allow the quarry to slip our grasp.
So what have you found out?
Well, you didn't hear it from me just yet, but we've got about 6 days left before the anchor from the ship transfers enough necrotic energy into the harbor to burrow straight through. At least start draining the harbor, maybe start heading into the Underdark.
She tells you that the king has sent people to check that exact situation, to go underwater using magical apparatus to take a look. And their reports have been nothing of the sort.
That also might have something to do with the odd behavior that has overcome several people in the city as of late.
She shakes her head and says the king checked their minds using some form of magic to determine whether they were being coerced. And as far as we know, they're the king's loyal men.
Well, I mean, look, I don't mean to put it this way, but I'm probably one of the most experienced arcane engineers in the kingdom. I don't know that they necessarily saw what I saw down there. Or if they did, they didn't understand it.
So she describes
I can tell you right now
what has been reported. And they just reported the anchor laying on the bare sand underneath the harbor with a chain attached. They didn't describe any of the funky Underdark rock that you found. They didn't describe any sinkholes falling away or anything of that nature. Other than the ship being somewhat transparent, their report didn't bring back anything of note.
Did they send, like, members of the Black Jackets or anyone else with significant arcane experience?
To her knowledge, she doesn't know exactly who was sent, but she might be able to find out with a brief inquiry.
I mean, I just think whoever went didn't know what they were looking at.
That's most likely, yes.
Make an insight check, both of you, individually, if you don't mind.
So 17 for Alex.
10 for Lucius.
So 17, Alex?
Yeah.
Journey doesn't respond, but she casts her gaze away from you. She narrows her eyes some, like she's lost deep in thought. She's got gears turning away in her head somewhere. Like she's picked up on something that you guys haven't.
Yeah. At any rate, we were planning to bring this to the king if we haven't found a solution on our own in about 3 days. You can avoid making too much of a ruckus until then, it would be appreciated.
Well, she says she won't convey this information to Ten Sails unless you think it's safe to do so. And currently it sounds like conveying this information won't help the matter anyway.
Assuming they even believed us.
She tells you that he has, meaning the king, has used a magical contact to speak with one of the priests of Osprum in Blue Worm. The reason for this is Ten Sails wanted to know, okay, can we position enough weather magicians in the harbor to sweep this ghost ship back out into the ocean? This is the cockamamie scheme that he wanted to put into play. And he was assured by the Temple of Osprum here that no, that would not be possible, but the temple in Blue Worm has recently received what they believe is an artifact of Osprum herself. So that correspondence has taken place, and as far as she knows, there might be a deal in place where an entourage from Blue Worm would arrive in Dunfoss at some time in the next week or so by ship, bringing this artifact to put this tidal wave, like reverse tidal wave plan into motion. She has tried to caution the king against this. This is exactly the kind of dumb shit she's been trying to tell the entire city we don't want to get involved with. She doesn't think this can be done without causing severe damage to all of the harbors in Dunfoss. The loss of life and the loss of property would be immense, and that's assuming it worked. And that's assuming that the High Priest in Blue Worm has this artifact to begin with, which she doesn't believe he does. She's telling you this story to kind of indicate this is how desperate Ten Sails actually is.
Okay.
So it's a good thing that this clearly, obviously, isn't a high artifact from Osprey herself. Otherwise, this might actually work, and this tidal wave might actually happen, and hundreds of people might actually lose their lives, and we might damage all of the harbors and ships and all this storefront, or all this waterfront property.
What's the timeline on getting that here, by the way?
The High Priest of Osprey could probably arrange to travel to Dunfoss by ship, but it would take low end, if they really hurried, maybe a week, because they would still have to travel overland to get onto a ship, because Blue Worm is landlocked. But from there, sailing their ship would be effortless, because they have weather mages and things to ensure that they've always got the wind at their back, that they avoid storms, etc. You guys made this journey, I think, in 2 weeks overland.
Mm-hmm.
Thereabouts. This would then happen, Alex, after the time frame.
Yeah.
Well, make an Arcana check.
26.
26. Hearing this, you did stall the anchor situation by a couple of hours by breaking it once. If you were to go down once or twice a day and do that, you could stretch out this doomsday situation, but you're not sure for how long. You might be able to stretch another couple of days if you want to give time for the High Priest to arrive and do this tidal wave plan. Which journey, by the way, is sure can't work. Because the High Priest doesn't act... Like, those kind of artifacts don't actually exist.
Yep.
I'm concerned that whoever you sent down there might be compromised, because during the course of our investigation we encountered your old rival for the ascension to the throne, Percival Penniless. His I don't know if you had heard about the altercation that we had in the Shallows a couple of days ago.
She tells you, to be honest, she has forgotten all semblance of the existence of Percival Penniless.
Lucius will go and describe what happened and how the situation goes, and then he'll go and explain when our companion was able to glance into his thoughts, it wasn't Percival Penniless in there. It was someone else, something else. It tried to eat our compatriot's mind, is the best way I can describe it.
And that kind of fits with what she's already suspected, as far as like people acting strange or being coerced into doing things. But again, she offers her assurance. She doesn't believe that the king's men were being coerced in that way. That said, she does ask if any of your people are going to be at your barge tonight.
Yeah, we can. I think
I can be there. I can arrange my schedule to be there.
She nods, and again, looks like she's lost in thought.
Did my father have any sort of plans for this, by the way? I visited the embassy yesterday. Seemed like he was in court.
She tells you that the ambassador spoke a big game about having contacts in the Underdark who deal explicitly with this kind of psionic threat, but was asking for things in return, to be like, maybe perhaps a placement of the embassy inside the city walls would be a good start. But the fact that he was trying to barter this left Journey with the impression that doesn't actually have anything to deliver. She feels like if he actually had something to give, he should do it for the good of the city, and obviously that has not happened.
No, completely agree with you. Plus, I mean, we've seen that the king is very happy to reward people after the fact when they do well.
She shrugs and she says, I will admit, I find myself quite rewarded.
What about the mass of people? Have you done any sort of... At the docks, have you done any sort of, like, magical detection to see if they're being coerced? Are there any blackjackets down there?
As far as that goes, she knows, and she says this with disdain. But she does know that the king has sent blackjackets down to have one or two members of that crowd kind of at random pulled out and hauled into the palace. What's been done with them, she doesn't know.
Disquieting. But yeah, we can meet at our barge tonight. I've got nothing else for her at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, me either.
She does seem to be in slightly better spirits than she was when she first arrived, and she kind of even sardonically thanks you for the excuse to get away from court for a short time. Anything else you want to do with Journey before she hauls off?
Nah, we're good.
No, I'm good.
She indicates, like, is there a way to just move these beads to the side and walk out, or are they going to electrocute me or something?
No,
they're just to make sure no one could hear us talking. You'll be fine.
They did. Yeah.
Okay, so she and her underlings take off. Gus.
Yes.
You have no difficulty tracking down Percival Penniless. It does take some time because he hasn't been out in public for a couple of days, and he's the kind of guy who just kind of rotates through a bunch of different couches throughout the city. But it doesn't take you long before you find just a little flop house he's been holed up in. And he's feeling a lot better than he was the other day. He thanks you for checking on him, and he thinks that by tomorrow, providing tonight he can get a good meal and a good whore, but he should be back on his feet, and he's going to considerably change the nature of his lectures, he thinks. Now that he knows that King Catsbin, such as he is, proves a danger to the people of Dunfoss.
You might be able to... You might actually concentrate your efforts over in High Court Harbor if you can get a place to speak there.
Why?
Because that's where that crowd is.
What crowd?
There's a crowd that are demanding to get onto the ship.
What ship? The ghost ship?
Yes.
Why in the hell would they do that?
Probably for the same reason you were, proselytizing Catsbin.
He thinks on it a moment.
He says, if anybody can talk these people into questioning what the hell they're doing, it's you.
He thinks on it, and he nods and says, perhaps I'm feeling a little better than I let on. He looks up at one of his men standing nearby and asks him to fetch his boots, that he thinks he's going to show himself in public today.
Yeah.
Are you sticking with him, or are you going about your business?
I'll ask him, how far, are you going to be okay by yourself?
Well, he's never alone.
Right.
He's always got his little entourage, his little posse.
And I'll tell him, I was like, if you or any of your men think that any of you are compromised, call. And we will continue on. We'll come help.
He nods and he gets up out of his bed and starts pulling on his breeches, and his man brings him in his boots. But you're not going with him. You're going to do something else?
No, I was going to go back to the barge.
Okay. And that leaves us with Connor.
We lost Connor.
gone, just destroyed. Where'd he go?